So I wanted to talk today. My name is Vikki. I'm in recovery for chaos creating, controlling, fixing. Sometimes I call it adrenaline addiction. But really, the delusion part of it is pretty sneaky, and that's what I would like to talk about today is facing my delusions. And where that came from is I was cleaning out my computer, deleting a whole bunch of stuff, deleting emails. Emails had built up and had these like hundreds and hundreds of emails and thought like, ugh, this just feels so cluttery to me. I feel like I'm not thinking clearly. I want to get rid of some of this stuff. And came across this sheet that I had been given back when I first started really doing the steps a few years ago. And I was just reminded how beneficial that sheet was. And so I wanted to bring that to you. And, where we find there's a few places in the big book that we find that the big book is talking about delusion. I'm going to go to page 60 and just start off our time together by reading from page 60. And page 60 is telling me that I need to be convinced that I am, whether I am emotionally sober or not, that I am an adrenaline addict, that I am a controller fixer. That is my emotional nature. And I think my brain likes to convince me sometimes that actually like I'm good now. I've got a grip on it and I'm good now. And I think that this book is telling me like, actually, even when I am emotionally sober, even when things are great, I need to remember that this is actually this is a true fact, kind of always and forever, that I cannot manage my own life. That probably no human power, certainly not my power, absolutely not my power, because I tried for a really long time, but no human power could relieve me from my state of chaos creating, and just this like innate ability that I have to want to control and fix myself and the world around me, and that God can and he will if he is sought. And so am I convinced of these three ideas? And if I am, is that how I'm going to spend my day? Like, is that how I'm going to start my day? Is that the way that I want to live my life? And I often can forget. So the first requirement is that I am convinced that my life run on self-will can hardly be a success. And on that basis, I am almost always in collision with something or somebody. So if I'm running my life on self-will, I'm going to be in collision with somebody or someone or something or someone, even though my motives are good. Have I tried to live my self-propulsion? I absolutely have. I go there on a pretty regular basis. And I'm like an actor who wants to run the whole show. I'm forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in my own way. I am forever trying to decide that actually I can do this. This is actually going to be okay for me. This is going to be different this time. I'm going to be okay over here. I can dabble in this little area. And really and truly, like if the rest of the world would just cooperate, everything would just be okay. And so that part, this part of page 60 and 61, when I went through this work, I took this part on page 61 and I put my name in the place. And it was such a great experience for me to read this section with my name in place and to read it over and over, which is what the homework was telling me to do at that period of time. And so I'm just going to do that right now. So if Vikki's arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as I wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including me, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, I may sometimes be quite virtuous. I may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, and even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, I might be mean. I'm more likely to be like sassy and a little bit snarky. egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, I am more likely to have varied traits. And so we go kind of in between. What usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think life doesn't treat me right. I decide to exert myself more, and Vikki becomes, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit me. Admitting that I may be somewhat at fault, I am sure that other people are more to blame. I become angry, indignant, self-pitying. That's kind of my favorite, I guess you'd say, or my natural inclination, self-pity. Not a favorite, but definitely a place that I'm more apt to go to more often. What is Vikki's basic trouble? Is she not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Is she not a victim of the delusion that Vikki can wrest satisfaction? And rest means to force satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only I manage right. Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things that Vikki wants, and do not Vikki's actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all that they can get out of the show? Is Vikki not, even in her best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony? And really, that's me apart from God. Apart from God, I really do try to run the show. And so delusion is a false belief based on incorrect inference about external reality that is firmly sustained despite what most everyone else believes, and or what, seeing evidence to the contrary. And I would even go so far as to say, that was a definition that I found, but I would go so far as to say I was delusional about my internal reality also. I was actually quite I was so full of fear. I was so insecure, didn't understand that insecurity was really prideful, really couldn't see how I was playing God, and the many ways in which that I was trying to wrest happiness and satisfaction out of the world if only I could manage well. And the way that looks, the way that this happens is I have some core fears, like so many fears, just so many fears. And when I'm being run by fear, what happens is my internal condition tells me that I'm not worthy. I'm unworthy. I'm not like other people. I'm unlovable. I would even say unlikable. I went through really quite a serious period of time of like just feeling really sorry for myself, and convinced that I really truly just wasn't likable. And which, really can bring me to a place of heaviness. It brings me to like a real place of darkness, and just, kind of, some people will talk about suicidal ideation. I don't know that I would have really understood it that way. I would have just maybe been a little more nuanced about it, but just like it would just be better if I was somebody different, or what's, kind of some of those, what's the point? Like, I should just go away. Why am I even bothering to try? A lot of those helpless, like, I'm alone. I am not worthy, and I am doomed, like, to this world of emotional pain. How is this ever going to go away? It's such a place of hopelessness and despair. And, it really just continues to perpetuate this like vicious cycle that I just could not see how to get out of. And then there's the delusions, which were brought to my attention. And, it was described to me that the delusions are deals that I am making with the world in order to cope with my fears. So the example being, if I can make X happen, then Y will be true. And, when this was brought to my attention, the person said, like, when they were 9 years old, they dressed for summer, convinced that then summer, it would be warm outside. If I just dress for summer, it'll be warm outside. And really, for me, the way that I could relate to this was like, well, if I could just control my emotional nature, if I could just respond the way other people need me to respond, then they will like me. Then I will be loved and I will be welcome and they will do what I need them to do so that I can be okay. If only I can manage well, then I can get happiness and satisfaction out of this world. If only the rest of the world would, do what I need them to do, if people would just like, do what I see is clearly as being like the best for them in life, then the show will be great. Like life will be great. Our marriage will be great. My kids will turn out great. And um and even like some things that seem pretty convincing, like if I could just be kind and considerate and patient and generous and, self-sacrificing, then I will be loved. People will want to be here. People will want to be around me. People will, you know, come to our meeting. And, there's lots of these different delusions that I was living out of that were just creating such a world of disappointment and chaos. Um, you know, there's this like belief system that if I just play by the rules, then I can control the outcome or that I could get what I want. Some were quite sneakier, and I was quite surprised to realize that I had a delusion that, in some ways, and this only showed up in some areas of my life, but that if I'm incompetent, people will look after me. If I don't make the hard decisions, like somebody else will make the hard decisions, and then I won't be the one to blame. If I am the best daughter or the best like friend to others, and then everyone will see that, and I will be worthy of the love that I felt like I deserved, that, and that really, almost to the point of like that I could get enough love now that it would like fill this tank that felt a little empty from before, if that makes any sense. So some of these get a little trickier. So this is from the sheet that I found, and some, not all of them I personally related to, but I'm going to read them all because maybe you might relate to them. And so if I always choose men who are incapable of loving me right, then my father can still do it first. Another one being, if I cynically dissect spiritual beliefs and practices, then I don't have to worry that there's no God. If I can manage on my own, then it's okay that there is no God. If I can keep myself busy to the point of exhaustion, then I will be a success. And if I ask for the least that I can get by with, I will be safe. If I don't demand to take up space in the room, then maybe I'll be safe. I won't rock the boat. Another one could be, if I am a knight in shining armor, if I'm like the rescuer or the hero, then I will be loved by the world around me. If I stay a child, my mother will come after all. Someone will take care of me eventually. If I can get everything perfect and right, then I will be capable or worthy of communing with God. And this one, if I am in self-loathing, then no one can blame me. And that one I really like sat in for, I remember like thinking like, oh, wow. Like if I hate myself enough, then other people like can't be mad at me. Like they can't blame me because I'm going to blame myself first. I'm going to hate myself more than you could possibly and then it was like this shield. It was this defense mechanism that I didn't even realize that I had put up to try to protect myself from all these fears that I had. If I acknowledge openly, but, kind of like, um, I don't even know how to describe that I used to do this, but like I would be self-deprecating. I would put myself down like in a really kind of gentle way, um, because I want to be included. So you'll include me. You'll like be more welcoming or, more inviting if I put myself down. Another one being that if I align myself with really successful people, then I have a chance at success. So just keep those like really high performing people around me and I will be more successful. So this one is a little tricky. So if I have a serious illness or like some other crisis, like then it's okay to take care of myself properly. Um, which really what that's like saying is like, actually, I'm not worth the time right now. Like it's that attitude of like, this isn't really that big of a deal. So I'm not gonna like pay attention to it. I'm not gonna, it's okay. It's not that I'm neglecting myself. Like this just isn't such a big deal. Um, if I stay reliant on other human beings, it's okay that God isn't there. Um, I can avoid uncertainty and be safe. And if I'm in crisis, then I can look for attention or look for support. So, it's like, yeah, for the chaos creator, for the controller fixer, it was a little tricky for me to like pinpoint because most of the crisis for much of my life was like around me. It was somebody else's crisis. And I really needed that support. I really felt like I needed other people's attention. I needed other people's support. And so I really think that was part of like what really became such an addiction for me was just like, I couldn't be okay. I couldn't live in that peaceful state. This one, if I rant and rave about something, then I'm no longer powerless over it. And I would say that for me, like the feeling that I would have when I would rant and rave about something, it actually had a physical component to it, like very similar to, I can say now, getting drunk, right? Like I began to really see how I would get emotionally drunk off my emotions, off the story, off of what was happening. And I would tell those stories like over and over to whoever would listen. And it was tricky for me when I really started to look at these delusions and I was unpacking them. And I was, really what I'm trying to do when I look at these delusions, I'm holding up a mirror and I'm asking, okay, fine. I want to see the truth. I want to see the truth about how I'm showing up in the world. I want to see the truth about where I am trying to control, where I am trying to play God, like we just read on page 60 in the big book, and 61. I am an actor who wants to run the whole show. And, I've got this thing pretty figured out. I really think I've got this thing pretty figured out. It's actually not my fault that it didn't work out. Let's just try harder next time. I'll try this thing over here. I'll try that thing over there. But then for me, I could really flip flop to this other place of like, if I am sad and needy, someone will finally come and rescue me. And this work and going through the steps this way, this, a few years ago. And really, I decided I don't want to be in delusion. I don't want to be controlled by fear anymore. And I really knew that I would keep going around and around and around in circles if I didn't do something different, something drastically different. Um, and, um, the selfish attitudes that I had were justification for my behavior. And, you know, I knew that I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. I knew that something different needed to happen. And yet I would just like flip flop from this like egomania controlling place to the place of like self-pity and the victim, and like, well, if other people would just like, you know, um, I just felt so sorry for myself. Um, and and so the beautiful thing that happened is fearlessly facing this idea that God is everything or God is nothing. Then I actually came to I knew that I believed in God. I just didn't understand what that meant. And I didn't know how to put it into practice. And that's what this work, that's what doing the steps and working through the big book showed me. These steps and working through the big book showed me how I could actually have a relationship with God that would actually be meaningful in my life. And um, in James 1 in the Bible, uh, James, it's telling us, I'm going to start at the beginning, which is a little bit of a frustrating verse, but I think it's seriously misunderstood often. Um, Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all that they do. And I feel like, this for the person like me who was a Christian for a really long time, but wasn't seeing the fruit of God in my life. The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous really showed me, how do I let perseverance finish its work? Like Moses parted the Red Sea, like he put out his arm, the Red Sea parted, God did the parting of the water, right? And then the Israelites needed to cross. Well, how did they do that? They did it with their feet. Like they actually had to walk across and do this action to get them across to safety. Otherwise, they would have died. They couldn't just stand there, um, you know, on that side and just thrown up their hands like I used to do on a regular basis and say, oh, life just isn't working out for me. I just don't understand. I felt so sorry for myself and didn't know how to make a change. And when James is telling us like to actually let perseverance finish its work, perseverance is an action of things that I actually like need to do. I need to ask God like every day, God, what am I supposed to be doing with this life that you've given me, this day that you gave me today? What am I supposed to do with it? Where am I not seeing clearly myself? Where am I not seeing the world around me clearly? Am I back in delusion? Am I truly who I say that I am? Am I speaking your word? Am I quoting scripture, but it's not actually being applied in my life? And I think it sounds really harsh when it says like, that the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Like, that sounds really, really harsh. And yet, how many times am I doubting? And then I'm like faltering and things aren't really going well and I don't have faith and I'm frustrated and I'm running on my own terms again. And I'm like, oh, oops, like what has God said? What has God said? Um, that's the same chapter of the Bible that actually talks about when tempted, no one should say God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. Each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. And then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And, this passage, I don't have time now. I got to wrap up. But when we talk about addiction and we are looking at a physical component, a mental obsession, and we're like, and a spiritual malady, it's not just this like, I need to just put down this thing that's bad for me. I have a mental obsession that takes me back. I have a spiritual malady. I'm apart from God, and I have a physical component. And if I'm not taking the actions to deal with each part of my sickness, of my unwell self, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, I can't just throw up my hands and say, this program doesn't work, because I actually need to do this action. I'm the one that has to cross. I'm the one that has to reach out to God. And the God who created me, when I reach out to God and, I've heard people's testimony time and time again of when they cry out to God, God is there waiting. God is there to answer and to reveal himself to us and to actually start to give us power. There's so many people that are like, I just don't understand it. And all of a sudden I like wasn't doing this thing anymore. But it doesn't, I really truly believe that it doesn't happen apart from God, and God doesn't work apart from our invitation. God's a God of consent and really invites us into a relationship with him. And so, yeah, I think that's what I wanted to share today. And I just pray that for each of us, that we would really see this week the power of God in our life.